I'm going to make a brief presentation that's kind of like an overview of the entire DeFi lending ecosystem. A lot of people have found this helpful. Binance included it in their DeFi report, and maybe some of you have already kind of read this already. It's been passed around by a lot of teams, Keep and 0x and Citibank, and a lot of people. But I'm going to present it here. Hopefully for you it's not a rehash. I'm just going to kind of set out a framework for understanding the DeFi lending space and how all the projects kind of approach the different problems. I'm going to break down each component of those protocols and kind of put it on a spectrum for everyone. So, framework for classifying DeFi lending protocols. So, over here you have completely centralized lending platforms. You got Salt, Celsius, Nexus, BlockFi. As you work your way down, you get Dharma, Nuo, Expo, which has been sunset. That was a project by DYDX. eFlen, Compound, Maker, DYDX, our product, Fulcrum, and BZX at the end. We were incentivized to create this and talk about it because we did go through a lot of pains to decentralize, so it's not a coincidence that we're talking about it and we happen to be quite decentralized. So there's a number of different components. You have custody, you have the price feed, you have the margin calls, you have where the margin call liquidity is coming from, you have how the interest rates are determined, and you have, of course, like how the platform is developed. Is it developed centrally by a company? Is there centralized control over a wallet that can modify the code, all of that. So, as I mentioned, Salt, BlockFi, Nexo, Celsius, they're all completely centralized, like traditional companies, all of that. And then you have Dharma. So Dharma's pretty interesting. They recently kind of closed down a little bit, but the general system was that they were non-custodial. They have a watcher contract that you submit your transaction to them. They have a watcher contract. That watcher contract forwards your funds into their main smart contracts, and they centrally handle the liquidations. They centrally handle the price feeds. They source all the liquidity. Recently, they've been trying to decentralize more, and they've been working more towards the MakerDAO liquidation model. The ecosystem, in a general sense, has been kind of converging on the MakerDAO liquidation system. So you look at DYDX, Compound, Dharma, all of the MakerDAO, obviously, have all kind of been converging on this sort of model where you have centralized price feeds and then you have people come in and bring liquidity. Dharma has a particularly centralized version of this. Dharma, not online right now. They're retooling and probably going to come out with something different pretty soon. Tier 2, you have Nuo, you have DYDX's Expo, which has been sunset. You have eFlen, AAVE, as you might know it in other circles. And eFlen has recently been retooling to have lending pools, to have both fixed interest rate loans and variable interest rate loans. They're moving towards that compound automated market maker model. And you got Nuo. So to just explain a little bit about Nuo, how Nuo works, they're non-custodial. They have margin calls that only they can initiate, so it's whitelisted. That can potentially cause issues compared to community liquidation models, because it's their one address trying to do it. The nonce is too high. They don't have multiple wallets. This has led to, at times, Nuo failing to liquidate in time and lenders suffering losses. Their margin call liquidity comes from Kyber. Their price feed comes mostly from Kyber, but they also pull from Binance, Coinbase. Their interest rates, it's like basically industry standard at this point. Algorithmic lending pools, kind of like Compound, like UIDX, like Fulcrum. And Nuo centrally develops their contracts. Expo, it's been sunset. They did Dutch auctions in order to liquidate. This turned out to be not a great idea because they would get slippage of like 20%. They would kind of centrally do it, go to Radar Relay and do it over the course of hours. So this exposed the lenders to a lot of risk. They didn't have any price feeds because it was a Dutch auction. And the interest rates, they were just like set. They're like, hey, you get 5% for this, you might get 8% for this. It didn't move around or anything like that. And of course, the UIDX controlled it. With ETHLend, so ETHLend kind of like puts it in the hands of the lender. So this was how it originally was. They're moving towards like a more compound-ish model. But it had some UX issues where like lenders would lend out and they would have to make the margin calls themselves. They would have to monitor the positions themselves. And this was like not a very favorable user experience for people. They charged, so the lender also had to provide the liquidity, so they incurred capital carrying costs. ETHLend also took a fee on top of that from the trader. The interest rates were like completely market driven. Both the lender and the trader just kind of negotiate that sort of order book style. And of course, ETHLend like centrally developed these contracts. So on like Degree 3, we have Compound and MakerDAO. There's a lot in common. Some people call Compound kind of like, you know, like the early multi-collateral DAI of sorts, so lets you get a lot of that functionality. But they use like these algorithmic automated market maker lending pools. So like with Compound, it's non-custodial. And anyone can initiate a margin call. Anyone can bring margin call liquidity in. Compound has their own price feed that they centrally administer. It's via a smart contract. That smart contract has a sensitivity parameter which prevents Compound from like moving it around too much within a given time period. The interest rates are set by their interest rate model, so they set the parameters essentially and presumably target some kind of utilization. Their development is, of course, centralized. MakerDAO has some similarities to Compound, so anybody can initiate a margin call with MakerDAO. The liquidity, anybody can bring it in. The price feed, MakerDAO kind of has like this sort of consortium. It's kind of decentralized, but also not really completely decentralized. Their price feeds are decentralized in the same sense that EOS is decentralized. You have, which is maybe a lot of you don't feel like EOS is decentralized, but they have 14 people or so that are closely related, who know each other, who are setting the prices. And you know, this does provide some, it's better than one person, right? It's just like, it's better than, like, EOS is better than 16 people or whatever they have are block producers, rather than just like one person who just centrally administers the database. Their interest rates are set by governance, so they have like the maker token holders set what the stability fees are. It's, you know, again, we in our framework here, we consider this like kind of on the border of decentralized. It's not market driven. So like truly decentralized interest rates would be like lenders and borrowers kind of meeting in the middle and figuring out like, okay, here's what I'm willing to pay in an order book model. This is more centrally set. It doesn't always hit like the market clearing rate. It's sort of like autonomous, so to speak. They're trying to, through trial and error, like a hill climbing algorithm, reach that market clearing rate up and down. And of course, MakerDAO is centrally developed, but it's open source as well. Degree 4 DeFi, you got DYDX and Fulcrum. So DYDX, they released a new version of their system where it's very different. It's moved like more towards the compound model, more towards like that automated market maker model. You got Fulcrum. That's what we did. Okay, and that Fulcrum model is also automated market maker. There's a lot of similarities to DYDX, but we're not a money market. Then there's some differences too. It's more general, and we'll kind of get into like two. I'll start with DYDX. So like DYDX right now is focusing just on ETH DAI. It's non-custodial. Anybody can initiate that margin call. Anyone can bring that liquidity. They're basically doing it like Compound, basically doing it like MakerDAO. They're using like Compound's like 5% discount on collateral. They use centralized price feeds. So right now they're kind of going off of MakerDAO's price feed. They're using the ETH to DAI price feed. They're also using that interest rate model that Compound is using, where they kind of centrally set the parameters. One difference from Compound is that DYDX uses like a polynomial for their interest rate model, whereas Compound uses a linear formula that's like y equals mx plus b. And of course, the development of DYDX is like successfully done by them. We of course hope that it will become decentralized, but like as every single thing I mentioned so far is centrally developed by the companies behind them, and no protocol so far has like been developed in a completely decentralized way. So to go back a little bit, Fulcrum, that's what we do. So one of the differences between Fulcrum and DYDX is that Fulcrum is more general. So Fulcrum doesn't just do ETH DAI, it also does all kinds of ERC20s. Anybody can make a margin call, anyone can bring margin call liquidity in. The price feed is from Kyber Network, which is basically, if you're not familiar with Kyber Network, there's a whole bunch of reserve managers that sort of compete in order to provide the best price. And so this is a really great and decentralized way to get prices that's robust and secure. The interest rates, they're just like Compound, just like DYDX, they're centrally set. There's an interest rate model. Ours is a little bit different from DYDX and Compound in that we have that linear model up to about 90%, and then we have a discontinuity, and then it very sharply rises after 90%. And this is so that the lending, the utilization of the pools never reaches 100%, so that people who are already in can like always get out. We think this is pretty reasonable. DYDX is doing something kind of similar with their polynomial, but not quite the same. Development, again, as with everything else, like everybody is essentially developing these products, these protocols. They have control over it. So the last one is BZX, so that's the underlying protocol that Fulcrum runs on. That's something we built. Went on mainnet like last year in September. It has gone, powers Bamboo Relay, which is a 0x relay. It is going to be powering Ethernex's margin trading, so they've kind of moved on to like rebranded to Diversify. And that is a 0x relay, but it's also going to be a BZX relay. It's going to have these order books and all of that. Right now, Diversify is integrating Fulcrum's margin tokens. So Fulcrum has like I tokens that are kind of like C tokens that steadily accrue interest. And they also have P tokens, which are like 2 times ETH, 3 times ETH, all of that. So those can be listed on exchanges, whether that's ETHX or centralized exchanges. Diversify is going to be one of the first exchanges that lists those P tokens, those position tokens, as we call them. So BZX, it's the most decentralized of all of these protocols. We were, of course, incentivized to write this article and all of that because we put a lot of time into decentralizing it, and it was something that was very important to us, very important. Something we put a lot of thought into, a lot of love into, actually. So the custody of BZX is non-custodial, like pretty much all of the DeFi protocols. It's sort of like the baseline. Anything that DeFi, it needs to be at very least non-custodial. Anyone can initiate a margin call. The margin call liquidity comes from Kyber, which is decentralized. Anybody can just enable a token allowance to a Kyber reserve, or they could, become a reserve manager. The price feeds, again, comes from Kyber. The interest rates, they're market-driven, so like it's done by an order book. So if you know like Bitfinex, Poloniex, Kraken, or any of those centralized margin lending or trading platforms, what you have is you have lenders, you have traders, and they have pretty tight spreads, and they are putting their bids and asks on that order book. There's a lot of benefits to that. Like first of all, it's completely decentralized, it's completely market driven. The spreads are tight no matter the market regime. With automatic market makers like Compound, like DYDX, like Fulcrum, you get pretty wide spreads most of the time. There's like 3, 4, sometimes 5% spreads, and like sometimes even more. And that's not really efficient. What you want to see is tight spreads. That's what you want to see in an efficient market. But if you have just static parameters of your interest rate model, you're going to get these tight spreads under like very limited circumstances, very limited market regimes. Whereas with order books, you can always get these tight spreads. So if you look at these centralized platforms for margin trading, they always have tight spreads because it's market driven and it's an order book. And of course, development, as usual, is centrally driven, centrally controlled, all of that. And that's generally, that's the whole presentation. It's on Medium. A lot of people have read it. You might have already came across this article. It's kind of a rehash, but it's interesting to think about in the context of Chainlink that a lot of the centralization that's happening in terms of these DeFi protocols comes from the price feeds. So decentralizing the price feeds is a really urgent and important thing to get power out of the hands of the protocols themselves. Compound recently announced an initiative for these open price feeds that anybody can contribute to. Unfortunately, they're not incentivized, so it's somewhat doubtful that it will gain any significant adoption. It could be the centralized exchanges use them to boost up vanity metrics, and probably appropriate to shout out that Stani Kulichov of ETHLAND AAVE first proposed the idea to Robert Leshner, and he kind of made it more public, made it more popular. I think this open price feed initiative was only announced like a day or two ago. So that is kind of the totality of the talk. And if anybody has any questions, now's the time to ask.